It does seem like the only thing we talk about these days is AI, though I promise all the snackers there is more to the world than AI these days. It just seems to be the big, exciting stuff that we're all after.
AI is all the hotness. And people are sometimes like, how do I actually take care of this stuff? Jason's going to show us how to run an LLM locally and with ease. What's all on our minds, which is AI. We asked Jesus here to join us today because I knew that he was kind of digging into some of the tooling around AI and specifically LangChain.
Hey Snackers, this is Kareem Iskander.
Hey everyone, Matt DeNapoli here. This week we bring back our friend Jason Belk. AI is all the hotness. And people are sometimes like, how do I actually take care of this stuff? Jason's going to show us how to run an LLM locally and with ease. Jason, for the new snackers, if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself, and then let's get right into it.
Sure. Hi, I'm Jason Belk. I'm a technical advocate here in the Learning with Cisco organization. Work with Kareem very closely, and so I'm thrilled here to share what we've been working on together in terms of AI here within learning certifications. I didn't build this stuff, but I want to share just what we're learning along the way. Yeah, just to kind of set the stage a little bit for those who are unaware, when you're using something like ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude, when you're sending out your requests, they actually go out to somebody else's computer. And so they own your data. There's, privacy considerations, especially, if you're in an enterprise environment or even just you're a privacy conscious person. And so for those of you who want to be able to run, let's say a smaller version of that same model that's from a lot of situations just as effective, there's something called LM Studio, which is freely available. It's not open source, but it's also the licensing basically allows you to get up and running quickly and able to play around with models. And then so LM Studio is basically almost like your VS Code, your editing environment. And then it allows you to load in these different LLM models, such as the Ollama from Meta. And those are freely available as well. So this gives you the opportunity to then ask questions, basically have your own prompting scenario locally in terms of a chat environment. And then there's even advanced plugins to be able to do it from a development perspective and even run it as its own server.
This is something that I just install, an application that I installed. Does it come pre-built with LLMs or models, or do I have to go out to like Hugging Face and get the model that I need?
Yeah, so once you install the application locally, and I'm sharing my screen right now, I already have the model installed, but the way after you've installed the application, you install the models, it has its own plugin that reads from Hugging Face, where Hugging Face is basically the GitHub of large language models. And they have, as you can see on the screen here, lots of different models available to you. I'd say the one that people are probably don't want to go towards is DeepSeek because for privacy considerations, even though it's not talking out to the outside world. I know that's one of the models on there, but the one that I used was from Ollama from Meta. And so from here, basically, you can pick the model that you want. If you don't know which model to pick, I'd say just kind of research online what a good one is. I started with the Meta Ollama one, and it downloads it locally to your machine, and you don't have to do any kind of fancy configuration beyond that. After it loads in after a few minutes, then you have the prompt up and you can ask it questions. You can go into Hugging Face and download them manually and load them in manually, but I'd say for most people, what I'm envisioning for people who are watching this episode is saying, hey, I've played around with ChatGPT and maybe I want to do this locally and I'm not like strong with AI, or I'm not necessarily strong with coding even. This provides a user interface for you to be able to easily integrate with these systems that are providing these free and open source models, and you just kind of click to download it and get up and running fairly quickly.
That's awesome. From your experience, I'm curious when you ran. I know when you're running it locally, or you're downloading an LLM. It's not the latest models that are out there. Is that true? And if it is, how does it compare to things like Claude and Gemini and with the latest LLMs that they have?
I'd say you can get the latest models that are free. So Meta has their models that they're continuing to evolve over time. And so like the one that we're using here is I think just a few months old, but I'd say they're also smaller models. So they're not going to boil the ocean, solve every possible problem. What I've been doing is just playing around with different network engineering scenarios. So I'd say from smaller use cases, kind of what you're going to do just in terms of your local environment. This isn't something I would set for production for my whole team necessarily, but it'd be like you getting used to AI in your local environment and saying what's possible for AI with me. And I haven't seen any huge limitations. Like when I'll put in a sample prompt in here for explaining how BGP selects the best path when multiple routes are available, includes steps and key attributes like weight, local preference, and AS path. And it then gives me a response. So I'm using the MetaLlama 3.1 8B instruct model, and it then provides us a response. So just like you're using with ChatGPT, I'd say I'm not an AI expert in terms of being able to give you the exact precision in terms of how this model compares to the GPT 4.0, but I would say for a lot of the situations that we're looking at as network engineers, this is probably good enough. It's only taking up about 5 gigabytes of hardware space on my laptop, and I'm able to run it locally within my MacBook Pro.
Now, does LM Studio allow me to do ragging and maybe attach an MCP server or something to it?
You took the words right out of my mouth, Kareem.
Yeah, I haven't played around with NCDP servers, but they do have an ability to basically plug in your own code. So I'll show an example of, they have a Python library called LM Studio, where basically you can set up a transaction handler to establish connection. Right now, I'm establishing a local REST behind the scenes. It's using REST to my LM Studio. That before I actually run that code, let me show you on the side here. We have our chat that we're using, where you can put in your different prompts. We have our developer mode, where you can turn on your local server, and it's running on localhost port 1234. And then when I run the Python library I'm about to show you, it'll basically just do a REST call behind the scenes. It has a wrapper around the REST API for that. And now if I go back to the Python code, we're importing LM Studio as LMS, and we create a model object telling us which model, and it's the only model I have installed, so I just tell it which model I work with, and I can say model.respond and put in my prompt. So I'm saying write an access list to deny telnet traffic from a certain IP address subnet, allow all other traffic, assume Cisco iOS, and print the result from that. And I've noticed, even though it is localhost, it does take 5 or 6 seconds for it to be able to send the request, process the request, and then send it back. But this LM Studio does have the ability for you to run it as its own server. So if you're running this in your organization, you could even have this on like a headless server somewhere that you're running requests against, and we see the response came back. So, like I said, in terms of like performance and actually getting results that seem good, like saying, create a new ACL, and it has, the ACL syntax, and it has explanation. So this could be something that you could maybe even integrate into a chatbot and have it toss in questions and provide some answers. I would kind of caution people to not necessarily do this in huge production environments. This is more just kind of for local testing and maybe your local team type things, but it at least gives you an experience where you completely own the data. It's not being sent out to anybody else. You're able to work with these fairly sophisticated models that can run on hardware that's not that beefed up.
Well, I can see the quickest use case for me right now. I mean, essentially what you did, Jason, was build a quick little agent.
Yep.
And so we can start to, within a contained environment that doesn't cost us anything in theory, start to play out how these agents would interact with each other.
For testing reasons without running out of tokens, actually.
Exactly.
You're not, yeah. And before you go to production, this actually makes a lot of sense. Granted, you probably get different answers from the different models given how well they're trained, but regardless, I think this is a really good first step when you're writing an agent before you actually go out and sub and get a production ready model.
Yeah, man. This is friggin' sweet.
No, for sure. And LM Studio, I don't have a demo set up for this necessarily, but they also have programmatic ways to execute these calls kind of in sequence in a more agentic way that you're talking about as well.
Yeah. Is there, and forgive me, I'm putting you on the spot here. Is there a low code, no code within the interface that allows you to chain those agents together?
Not that I'm aware of. In terms of the interface, the low code part is just kind of the prompting back and forth. The other interface that people typically use for interacting with these open source models is called Ollama, where basically Meta has their own CLI interface where you can download the models and not have. But I think for folks who are getting up and running and just want to play around with it, having a GUI that you can just click and install and have it up and running, and then even have development for those who want to play around with it a little deeper. Just helps folks feel like they can play around with data that might be more sensitive and not have any worry about it going out to the public internet.
Yeah, I think this is a brilliant way. I mean, just for, I'll still say I'm at the beginning of my AI journey, and I'm intrigued by leveraging this tool to start to kick the tires. Thanks for showing this, Jason. This is fantastic.
Jason, thank you so much. Before I let you go, I'm also gonna put you on the spot. Why LM Studio versus something like Cursor or whatever other IDE that's out there?
Sure. So my playing around with Cursor is that it actually talks out to those outside models. I think you can set up other models with it, but it requires a little bit more effort on your part. So I'd say generally with Cursor, it's where you're like, I want to pay for a subscription and have it actually talk to Gemini, Claude, OpenAI, and your Cursor is, I'd say, more effective at loading in the context of all of the code that you're working on, and then giving you that contextual feedback loop. Where this is more almost just like a wrapper around the model. You're just giving you a way to access the model in an easy way, to just purely interacting with the model without having any other kind of additional features around it. Even though you can build on top of it, I'd say natively it's more of like a playground for your playground, where I say Cursor is more designed for developers who are trying to enable their productivity.
Snackers, feel free to go check out LM Studio, and we'll see you guys next time.
Thanks, Jason. Thank you, Snackers.
If that's
Hey, Snackers, this is Kareem Iskander.
Hey, everyone, Matt DeNapoli here. This episode, we have our good friend Hank back.
It's always a pleasure to be back with you both. It does seem like the only thing we talk about these days is AI, though I promise all the snackers there is more to the world than AI these days. It just seems to be the big, exciting stuff that we're all after. Hank Preston, I'm a principal engineer in Learn with Cisco, and I work on all sorts of things related to, network engineering training, certification, strategy, our instructor deliver, how we deliver content for instructors, network academy work. I kind of get to put my fingers in a lot of different pies, but generally they all relate to learning technology and learning technical topics, mostly focused on network engineering.
Today, you're going to talk to us a little bit more about LM Studio, and I know you've been driving the initiative in our organization to kind of bring in LM Studio to anybody that's using or leveraging AI for local development. I've learned a lot from the sessions that you pulled together, Hank, so thanks for that. But I wanted to make sure that we share some of that with our snackers to see the potential. So what are you going to talk to us about today?
Yeah, and I know Jason was on a few episodes ago. I don't know which number it was, kind of introducing LM Studio, and I'm a huge fan. AI and generative AI tooling and capabilities is really amazing, but a lot of what folks see and get started with AI are the cloud-based services like ChatGPT or Gemini or Claude or any of the ones that are there. And so it can seem like you need these massive kind of nuclear powered data centers to just experiment and learn about AI. And one of the things that really opened my eyes is when I first started to experiment with local LLM running. And what that means is rather than using hardware in the cloud, right, by one of these big providers, you're just running the LLM, the language model, on your laptop or on your desktop or whatever you happen to be using for your computing device. And you interact with it the same way. And I was amazed by how well you can use AI and the features, the capabilities that you can do without having kind of those big services. Now, running it on your laptop is not the same, right? You're not going to get the exact same performance. You don't necessarily have access to the exact same models that are running in the big proprietary cloud services. But there's a lot that you can do, and you don't need those full capabilities. And so my goal today is to kind of show a few more examples and dive into some of the things you can do with LM Studio. And LM Studio is just one of the local LLM tools available. It just happens to be the one that currently is my favorite kind of tool in the toolbox.
Well, that's fantastic, Hank. I think the snacker is going to be really excited to see, because usually you'll bring to the table a demo that's tied to networking infrastructure, automation, and programmability. So can you give us a tie into real quick before you do the demo and show us what you're working with, what use case we're going to be looking at?
Yeah, so I've got a couple of specific use cases related to network engineering types of tasks we would do as network operations. that we could leverage something like LM Studio for. I'm going to skip over some of the basic stuff that Jason covered with you guys and kind of dive into some of the I don't want to say advanced, because this is all still fairly basic AI pieces, but just that next step up. So we're going to start with kind of doing some network configuration analysis. We're going to pull in a little bit of retrieval augmented generation and talk about why that's important. And then if we've got some time at the end, I want to dive into maybe some kind of using AI to analyze network diagrams, which is an interesting aspect and kind of way to go after it. And then finally, if we get into some of the automation side, one of the big topics these days are building agents and tools for agentic AI. And we can use LM Studio to help us with kind of learning and exploring that new side of network automation. So it's kind of the spectrum of what I've got prepared for you gents today. We can jump around a little bit. If there's a part of that, Matt and Kareem, you guys want to jump into first or different, I don't much care. All of these, I think, are really interesting ways to look at it.
No, this is it all.
That sounds like you're going to start at the baseline and build up. So let's go.
Yeah. Okay. So what I'm sharing here is my LM Studio window. Now, I know we've seen this before. The snackers that have been on are there, but just to review a couple of things, the LM Studio is designed to look like most of the AI chat-based interfaces you're used to. And so we can see that I can type a message in down here, but because it's a local client, we have to tell it what model we're going to use. And I've downloaded onto my laptop a series of models that I can run directly on my workstation here. And for reference, I've got a MacBook, an M4 MacBook with about 28 gigs of RAM. So a reasonable system, but not one that's it's not one of the kind of systems that's wildly out of place for a network engineer to have, right? It's the standard MacBook that we get as just engineers here at Cisco. So I don't have a big farm that's going, a big GPU farm that I'm running these against. And so the model I've loaded now is one of the newest open weight models that were sent out there. So this is one that was published by OpenAI. And so this is built using similar architecture to the ChatGPT models. And this was released, does it even say? It was released, several weeks ago at this point. But this is the smaller of their two GPT OSS models. So it's got 20 billion parameters. It's a fairly large model. But one of the things I've been liking about using it is it's very capable. It has the ability to work with tools. It's a reasoning model. And I can run it directly on my laptop, which gives me some nice behavior on that. So I've picked that one. If we get into some of the images or the vision processing, we'll dive into some of these other models that I've got. But you can see I've got a whole bunch of these all kind of downloaded, and I can flip between them as I want. So I've got the OpenAI one loaded. Now, once I'm in here, because it's a reasoning model and it provides the ability to kind of tune the level of reasoning that it's going to kind of go after. And so I'm going to switch this from the low reasoning level. I'm going to just, we'll set it up to medium. So it's going to think a little bit harder about its answers. The way I kind of look at these is the low reasoning is kind of just shoot from the hip. You ask a question and it's basically very little reasoning. It's just going to start immediately responding.
That's how I work.
All of us sometimes, right? Medium means it's going to think about it a little bit, kind of make a plan and then respond. High reasoning is where it will spend a lot of time kind of churning through the question, to some extent overthinking the question. I've actually had cases where the model just gets in a thought loop and never finishes when it's set to high reasoning, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah, I've seen that too.
Yeah, I've seen on that is when I switched it to high reasoning and I ask for like a joke, and it just sits there constantly thinking, oh, that's not funny enough. That's not good enough. No, that one's boring. Maybe we should do something. And it just kind of goes forever.
That's how I work.
Yeah, that's how you work.
Nice. All right, so we'll go with medium. And then for this first one, I'm going to go ahead and grab, I've copied, I'm going to paste it in a second so you don't have to watch me type. But the idea for this first example is I am not going to ask the AI to generate a network configuration. In general, I still believe that that's kind of our job, is to generate the things. But what we do like the ability is to have somebody look over our work. So I'm going to say, hey, I've put this template together for a VPN configuration. Can you review and provide some suggestions? So I paste it in. So it's just kind of a standard crypto template. I've put it in here. It's got kind of Jinja placeholders to show where it goes after. And so this is something I might do with another network engineer on the team, or send it over to, if I'm a customer, I might send it over to my partner engineer or Cisco or TAC. But let's see what AI can do. So I'll fire this off. And what we'll see is, it's processing locally on my laptop. And it's got now the thinking is kind of kicked in. It says, all right, the user's given me this piece. It's going to flip through these things. I'm not going to read all the thought process here, but if you're interested in kind of how it thought through it, you do get to be able to peek behind the curtain and watch the reasoning behavior after the fact to understand what it is that the model is doing and thinking about your question. One of the, I'll say, if there are disadvantages to reasoning models, is that they're a little slower, right? If you've been using AI for a while, oftentimes you ask a question and boom, the answer's there. When you start asking them to think deeply or do this reasoning, it will take a little longer. And that's why I'm continuing to kind of babble and kill time here. Oh, good, it's done thinking. And so now we're getting kind of the review for our code review that's done. And we'll let this process, and then we'll kind of look at a couple of things that it calls out. But any color commentary from the peanut gallery while we're waiting?
I mean, I thought it was interesting that we could peek behind the curtain and see how it was working through the reasoning. I know it was moving a little faster than we could probably read it, but being able to go back and understand potentially how it's processing that. And then even you had mentioned the retrieval augmented generation. I think I have a feeling that's going to play into one of your later demos and show us how it brings in other context to help it understand what it's working on.
Well, I like the
Yeah.
fact that the thing is that I like here is I could be on a plane without connected to anything outside to the outside world and be doing this work. And it's super quick. So if I compare it to, some of the cloud tools that I use, like Claude or whatever, it is very similar, and I didn't have to wait very long, and all of this is running locally, which is, I think it's really, and you didn't have to. The other thing is you didn't have to worry about running through your tokens or any of that
Or paying for
you're
anything, right,
or
right.
paying for anything. So
Well, and I was
Yeah.
wondering, I know we're using this kind of for a learning platform, but one of the bigger concerns that I could see from an operational perspective is that cost structure that goes in with using some of the cloud-based models. But if we can find a local model potentially that meets our needs for any given activity, I could see solutions being built very specifically with smaller local models in mind. And if they hit that, if they hit that solution that we're looking for, why spend the money if we don't have to, right?
Yeah, I mean, we could have a whole conversation, I think, in another snack minute discussion all about that. But everything you said is completely on board. I've actually used LM Studio on a plane coming back from a Cisco Live to do some work for that exact use case, Kareem. The token pieces, I was talking with one of our coworkers, and they were doing some development work. And I remember during their video, the Claude thing pops up and says, your free tokens are done. Come back at 5 p.m. And all of that's really kind of frustrating. And so these are just some of the great reasons for local LLM. But I'm going to scroll up again, and we don't have time, and it's not worth it to go through all these answers. But what we can see as I scroll is I got a lot of really good information from here. So from a code review, I can take a look at it. I always like to point this out. I've been using this particular code snippet for a while, and there is an originally accidental typo in the template. And I'm always curious, can it find it? Does it see those? And it's the first thing it found is, hey, there's a minor syntax issue, that there was a typo. There's supposed to be a space right here between set and VPN transform. So find some of the basics. But building on this one, moving into RAG, one of the downsides or one of the potential issues with using open models, or any model where it comes from, is you don't know what the training data was in. You don't know how accurate its knowledge around networking is. And this is where RAG can come in handy. And so I think you guys have talked about this in other sessions before, but I'm going to just kind of spin open a new chat here and say, okay, I want to show how we could do the same question, but rather than relying on just the training data that's in the LLM, I want to provide access to known good information. So I'm gonna turn the reasoning effort actually down to low, just so that this demo goes a little faster. So we're gonna use RAG. I'm gonna go ahead and attach, and I'm gonna grab. I just downloaded the security and VPN configuration guide for iOS XE from Cisco.com, and so I'm gonna go ahead and let me try to open this. uh-oh, I get a problem. And so what we're seeing is it's failed to upload the size. That file, I think, is like 40 megs. And so what we're seeing here is one of the downsides, right? This is local LLM. It's not as powerful as some of those big data centers, but 31 megs is still pretty good. I just need to be a little more selective. And so rather than adding the entire guide, I'm going to go in and say, I'm just going to add the chapters related to VPN configuration. So put a little more thought into it. I'm not going to send it like 40 megs of content. I'm just going to send it the data that's relevant. And we'll open all that up. And we'll see now they're all listed as attached to this chat. And so now, and then we also see kind of this RAG thing has been kicked in to say, okay, we're now going to use RAG, which is a kind of a tool or a plugin to LM Studio to analyze those documents. And then I can put the same basic template in. So if I copy the template over and say, can you, review this VPN config template and provide feedback. All right, and we'll put it in. All right. So it'll go through. So we'll see LM Studio comes in and says, I'm going to kind of choose the injection strategy. There's so much data that it couldn't just put it into the context window. So it has to use retrieval. And then it goes and searches. By default, LM Studio limits itself just to three relevant citations, but you can raise that up to 10 if you want to have it pull more information out. And so now it will go through and kind of start to predict and create the information. So it's processing through the details that come out and give me some more data. Now we'll let this kind of to run through. The key aspect that I want to kind of highlight here, which is why I show this as a demonstration, is that we often want to use generative AI to provide feedback on configurations or do configurations for us, but that it's really apt to get hallucinations on different types of areas. But if you can provide good documentation like a configuration guide, a CVD from Cisco, some sort of material as part of a RAG injection, well, now you can have a little higher degree of confidence you're going to get a good answer out of it. And LM Studio gives us that ability to kind of work with our network configuration documentation. And so we get kind of a nice piece. We can see our templates clean, follow Cisco's best practices, and then a couple of different suggestions that are there. So now I've got that kind of loaded up and I can take an advantage of that. So thoughts, questions?
No, I just want to comment that I was doing a good job inferring what you were going to do next, so I called that one out.
It's almost like we've done this before. We've presented before.
Sure. This is actually really valuable. I'm assuming the next step here is to introduce tools into this.
Yeah, so we can look at that as kind of the next piece to go in, because I know we always run late on this. So maybe we'll keep the network diagram analysis for another one, and we'll talk a bit about the capabilities that LM Studio has for tool use.
If you want to dive into that, Hank, by all means, if you see value in this.
Well, I think they're both interesting. You guys tell me which one you want to see. We'll do one, and then that'll give you guys a reason to bring me back if you want.
Yeah, let's do just continue on with this one. Do the network diagram.
The next thing I want to look at is the ability to use AI to analyze the network diagrams that are there. And so this is something that you may have used in the cloud before. And I know that as network engineers, we're often given network diagrams that we have to do something with or pull data off of them. And so we'll let me start a new chat here. So I'm going to go down and say, let me try to pick an image file. And so I'm going to jump back and say, okay, where is it? Here we go. And so hopefully this will come through in the recording as we see. But if you'll notice, I've got this network diagram, QuirkTech network diagram, but it's grayed out. I can't select it. And the reason I can't select it is because the model I'm using doesn't have the ability to analyze imagery, right? It's not a vision capable model. And this is why having the ability to kind of play and experiment with different models is important. So I'm going to eject the GPT OSS model, and I'm going to pick which one am I going to use? We'll use the Mistral small model. And this little eyeball thing here tells me that it can process image inputs. It's kind of the indication that it's capable of vision. And so I'll select that one. It'll load it up. And what we see is I now have this new thing where I can attach an image because this model is capable of taking a look at a diagram. And so I'm going to go ahead and click on that. Oh, all right, there it goes. And I will pick that QuirkTech network diagram PNG file, and we'll open this up. And it's just, you can kind of see it in the tiny piece that's here. It's a standard network diagram. And I'm going to say, can you describe this network diagram. And so it'll take a look at it and it'll process it. Now, as it's going through this, I'm going to kind of tee us up for where we go from here. Similar to what we saw with the RAG example, where there was a limit to how much data that the local model or could pull in. I have a similar complexity with image references here. And so what I typically see when I do this demonstration is it starts out pretty good, and it did here. It says it's a diagram titled QuirkTech Corporate Network. It represents the structure and connections. And then at this, okay, here we go. At the center, there's a core network labeled QTP and DNS. This likely represents the primary domain. There's network segments. The pink is called executive office. Let me actually go find that diagram, and we'll compare what we're actually seeing from this. So here's the diagram. And if we look, we can see Circuit Cove Data Center is the pink box. So what to point out here is that even though with the local, I can load things up, we still have to kind of check our work with anything we do with AI. Now, this doesn't mean that it's not useful to use LM Studio. It just means that we have to kind of understand what's possible. So what I want to do instead is I'm going to do a new chat. I'm going to say, now I'm going to grab, where is it? The widget woods. So this is a smaller, really what this is it's just this portion of the diagram at the bottom. And so now I'm going to say, can you describe and list the networks from this diagram? Because it's a smaller diagram, there's less data for this model to process. It's a fairly small, it's even called Mistral small model. But this diagram, it can handle it really, really well. It has accuracy in grabbing the IP ranges. We'll see here as it processes through the VLAN information, it successfully can pull the VLAN names, the subnets, the details. And so again, local LLM use with LM Studio, great use case, but just remember to kind of don't treat it like it's one of the big cloud models. If you used effectively, it's a really powerful tool for all of us to go after. So it's just something to keep in mind as we do our experimentation. And I know that's probably where we're going to have to end today's conversation and kind of discussion, but hopefully this gives you guys, as well as the snackers out there, more ideas on how you can kind of take advantage of this aspect of AI.
Snackers, go check out LM Studio, play with some of the tooling and models that Hank showed us today. Become a little bit more comfortable with it. It is very interesting and very fun to play with, and we'll see you guys next time.
Thanks, Hank. Thank you, snackers. Hey, snackers, this is Kareem Iskander.
Hey, everyone, Matt DeNapoli here. This week, we're going to be talking to Jesus about what's all on our minds, which is AI. But before we get into that, Jesus, would you mind introducing yourself?
Sure. So I'm Jesus Illescas, developer advocate with DevNet. I work with SP Produce, XR, NSO Crosswork, but I'm really interested into programmability and now, of course, AI.
So we asked Jesus here to join us today because I knew that he was kind of digging into some of the tooling around AI and specifically LangChain. You guys might have heard of that a number of times from various different places and are trying to kind of figure out what it is and where it can play in. So Jesus, would you mind giving us a little bit of a background on LangChain and then kind of how you've been using it for the last few months?
Sure. So LangChain is one framework that we can use to interact with LLM programmatically. It's not the only framework available, but it's a framework that I like. It's based on Python and JavaScript. And I like because it's agnostic. So if you develop for one LLM, you can then switch and use another one. And here, for example, on my screen, you can see like the components that we have with LangChain. So we have LangChain, the core. We have LangGraph, which is for using multiple agents. We also have several integrations, and you also have LangGraph Cloud. Now, LangChain is a complete framework, so it's going to take a while just to go through everything. So I'm just going to focus on one thing, which are tools. So what are LangChain tools? Basically, a tool is a way the LLM can interact with anything. By anything, I mean you can provide a tool a ways to interact, to do a Google search, to interact with a database, for example. And here on this screen, you can see several integrations that already exist. For example, if I scroll a bit below, you can see several examples: Bing, Brave, DuckDuckGo, Exa, Google Search, etc. but we are interested into networking, right? So when I saw the tools and I started to investigate, okay, what are they? How can I use them? I saw that, hey, if you don't find the tool available, you can create your own custom tool.
Oh, cool.
And that's where I found quite interesting. Yeah, indeed. So basically, we can provide the LLM a way to interact with a Python function, or of course, JavaScript function as well. And this opens a new world of possibilities, because if you know very well, we can interact with network devices via programmatically, right? Via APIs or CLI if you want to do it. But the thing is, we can use a Python function. So that's when I started to think, okay, yeah, this looks quite interesting. What can I do? And then I remember an issue that I had several years ago when I was alone and I was trying to troubleshoot, and it was really, really bad. And I thought, hey, it will be nice if there's an issue and then the LLM can help me, okay, just to give me some tips. And that's when I got the idea, let's create something very simple just to try to demonstrate if this thing works, because at that time I wasn't aware if this is possible or not. So what I did basically is to create this example that you can find on Cisco Code Exchange. It's called AI Network Troubleshooting. Basically, I have some pieces on this demo. We have the network, which in my case is CML, very simple network. I have some observability solution, in this case, the TickStat, which is quite simple and easy to use, Telegram, InfluxDB, and Grafana. And I'm communicating with the network devices via netconf. And then I'm using LangChain, as of course we are showing here. And I'm using tools to interact with network devices via PyATS, which is the thing that I consider quite interesting. As well, using tools, well, no, actually not using tools, using Fast API, I'm able to interact with WebEx, and of course the LLM. So there are many components on the demo. So I will just give you the overview and then we can talk more. So you may be wondering how I can use LangChain tools in this case, for example, with PyATS, how that was possible. Well, as you may know, the code that we have on Cisco Code Exchange is available on GitHub. So you can also come to the top, view code on GitHub. And in my case, for example, here on this directory, the repository, LLM agent, LangChain tools. In this case, for example, these are some tools that I developed for getting the device health state. And if you see, I'm just importing a tool. In this case, it's a decorator, and I'm putting it upon a function. Now, as you can see, I'm very, very specific on my function. In this case, I'm saying, for example, I'm expecting a device name, and the type is a string, which is quite important. So it helps the LLM to know, okay, what is the kind of string of device I'm expecting, which is a string, and I'm returning a dictionary. Then I have a docstring, which is super, super important. The more specific docstring that you have in your tools, the easier will be for your LLM to use them. In this case, for example, you can see I'm retrieving the memory. I'm also saying again, okay, this is the arguments and what I'm returning. And then the tools are expecting the results to be in JSON. At least when I was writing, at the time I was writing the function, that was what I was expecting. As always, check out the latest documentation. But at this time, I'm returning a JSON. And in this case, you can see this is the actual function that is implemented the PyATS logic that is connecting to the device that will grab the health memory. When I was discovering all of this is like, okay, this is how I can do it. This is how I can link PyATS to LLMs. But I think it's better to see it in practice.
I have a quick question, Jesus, before you move on to the demo.
Yeah.
In the code that we just saw, you had mentioned that the documentation string was kind of the key there. So everything between the triple ticks, that is something, and correct me if I'm wrong here, because I could be misunderstanding it, but that's something that the LLM will take as input and help us get to the point where, for this particular function, get the memory of a particular device. Am I correct in that assumption?
Yeah, the LLM will trust the docstring, so it should be very, very close to what it does.
Okay.
The LLM doesn't actually know how to connect to the device. It doesn't know that I am using PyATS. It doesn't know that I'm connecting, for example, using CLI. It doesn't even know the command that I'm using, right? All of that is abstracted using functions in Python. So the LLM really relies on the docstring. That's why the docstrings are key in our case. So the LLM knows exactly what to do.
That's what the prompt would be if we were to interact with it in a search box, right?
Jesus, does that mean if I integrate Copilot with whatever I'm using here to write this code, I could generate the documentation from Copilot, the prompt engineering that the LLM is going to rely on? I can AI generate that and then push it into LLM, so I could streamline all of that via AI.
That's a very clever observation, Kareem. And yes, actually, this is the result of several iterations with GitHub Copilot. I know we are not talking about prompts in this case, but if I go very quickly to my directory, LLM, prompts, this is the prompt that I'm using. It's quite big, so we are not going to go all of that. But also the prompt was the result through several iterations with GitHub Copilot. I was using another LLM to create the prompt that I'm using with my LLM.
It's
cool.
Like AI
well,
inception.
yeah. Well, and I think that's when we start to get into the argument of the agentic aspect of this. Right. Is now, I mean, for all intents and purposes, it looks like Jesus built a PyATS agent.
Pretty much, yeah.
All right, let's see the demo and be blown away by it.
I'm using CML, and the topology is, of course, you can find it on the GitHub repository I'm sharing everything there. For the sake of this demo, it will be something very simple. So I have 3 network devices, Catalyst. I'm using ISIS because my background is on SP, so ISIS. Basically, what I'm trying to find is if the LLM can find the issue with ISIS. So I have a observability solution, in this case Grafana. I have a neighbor ISIS count. So in this case, if the neighbors or if the number of ISIS neighbor is lower than the previous time, I will have an alert, and the alert will tell the LLM, okay, something happened, so take a look. Let's do it in action. So I'm going to Catalyst 1 to the console, open a console. So in this case, let's go to conft. Let's see the interfaces will show IP interface brief. I have several interfaces, but only some are on the ISIS part. I'm going to use interface gigabit 5. And now I'm going to shut it down. So this should bring down the ISIS interface. Don't do that on a production network.
Unless you're disgruntled.
Or Matt.
I wouldn't even know how to do this, Kareem.
That's why you got to take your CCNA, Matt.
Blah, blah, blah. Okay, we see it in the dashboard.
Yeah, the dashboard is already detected that there is an alert. And since I'm using WebEx, on WebEx, you can see I receive an alert from Grafana. This comes directly from Grafana. So, but it is very important. There is a summary that there is an ISIS neighbor down on this device, and that's it. And the LLM was very quick, so it gave us already what it found. But I want to show you what it did on the background. So as you can see, there are many I would say text going on. And basically the LLM was first, verifying if the device exists, because the LLM was hallucinated. So I had to make sure, check the device exists first. So that's something it's doing. Mm-hmm. And after that, it starts to review, do several observations on the devices. It's not just one action, it's doing several actions. So for example, in this case, it's checking the logs. In this case, it's checking the CPU. It's checking if there is some memory issue. In this case, for example, it's checking the interfaces. What is the status of the interfaces? And it's able to see it's admin down. It's doing several actions. And I wasn't interested to give me the whole thing. I just wanted to have like the summary and next action that I can do. And is what I have on this case. the very summary after a lot of analysis. So in this case, it's already checking that gigabit file is a potential issue. So yeah, I can say, please think of again the interface, but only if it's part of ISIS. So let's see if this works. And by the way, I forgot to say this is live. Even though you see the recording, this is live. So yeah, we are on dangerous path in this case. So as you can see, in this case, it's already trying to connect to the device. It's checking, okay, I can see the configuration of the interface. Yeah, it's part of ISIS. Then I'm going to bring up the interface. And if I go to the WebEx, I can see the notification that, yeah, it was turned on. Let's see here. Okay, it's still waiting a bit to grab it, but basically turn on the interface. Yeah, you can see here. There is a bit of delay in the way I implement the netconf. But you can see it's on the interface.
Fixed it.
And fixed the issue. Yeah. Now, I can say, yeah, I have some next steps. Hey, please execute the next steps.
You're so polite to the AI. I normally don't talk to it that way.
I don't think that's for this episode.
So in this case, I just want to verify, okay, ISIS is good. As you can see, it's doing something. And yeah, it now checks that ISIS is good. So basically, I know it's quite simple demo, but what I wanted to make sure is, okay, how can I use an LLM to help me in an issue that I had long time ago? And if tools are the right tool to use to interact with network devices and LLMs. And as you can see, yeah, they are quite useful. Of course, the key is always to provide the right context. And this is something that you as developer need to take care. I took care when developing my PyATS function on that part. But after that is developed, okay, you can rely on this part.
This is a great demo, and it makes a lot of sense. I think there's also, like, if you think about this from outside of demo, from a production perspective, where and this goes back to one of the conversations that we had, Matt, with Splunk, and the demo that I did. There's a play here where we could actually, part of the alerts that we push out to Splunk from your devices or from the network, we could attach recommendation from the AI on how to remedy, and we can actually have that as part of the index in Splunk. So yeah, as if you're looking at issue resolution and you can search that and you see the resolution is something that's normally you can take care of, you can automate that process, or you can go back to your network and fix it and have the AI fix it for you. So this is really useful.
And then if you're running your own LLM and can tune it, then you can even add that into the process as well.
Well, I presume in production you would have to run your own kind of small language model or LLM.
Oh, yes. Yeah. You'd have to pull it out and put it back in.
Yeah, and security reasons, right?
Right. So, Jesus, actually, I think our snackers would probably like to see more detail into the implementation side of this, because we kind of touched on the LangChain portion a little bit, but I think and actually this is for me too, I kind of want to understand a little bit more. The demo was super cool. When we have you back, we'll have you do like a quick, hey, remember we did this, and kind of dig into what you actually had to implement, and potentially even talk about what specific LLMs you used, what went into your decision-making point there. I think there's a lot of value in some of the details, but you've piqued my interest, and I guarantee you've piqued our snackers' interest on this. Thank you so much for coming today. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have, but we're definitely going to bring you back and dig more into this solution because, you called it simple, but it's not. There's a lot in there. There's a lot in there that I think that I think could be hyper useful and really grabs our snackers' interest. So Thank you so much, Snackers. Join us next week for another episode of Snack Minute. And Jesus, thank you so much.
Jesus, thanks a lot. And Snackers, thank you for your time today.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah.